Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads, coming to you from slightly different angle. So today I wanted to talk to you about the current state of my physical TBR, as well as talk about participating potentially, hopefully this year, in the TBR Spin, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. So over the past few years, I've been on the slow journey of just like reducing my physical TBR. I've come to a point now where I don't want a zero TBR, like I don't feel a strong desire to be like, I have nothing left on my physical TBR, but I definitely want to keep it on the smaller side. And my general goal is that I don't want books to be sitting on my physical TBR for over a year. I use this app called Libib. I'll have a link to it down below. They're really fantastic. And I use that basically just to keep track of my books in general. Like I have all of those books scanned into the app, and I have two different sections. One section is just called like my library, and that's where all of my books live. And then I have another shelf or another like sort of collection that I call my unread books. And so I can always glance at that to see, one, how many books I have left on my physical TBR, as well as see the dates that I like scan things in. So like my goal is to like scan things in the month that I get them. So that way I can see approximately when I've brought these books into my life. So that way I can make sure that I'm like reading the oldest things on my TBR and nothing is sitting there for over a year. And so the way that I've been basically doing this over the past year is that I just go from the oldest to the newest. It works well because then I'm definitely hitting that like 12-month mark. Or if I don't hit the 12-month mark, I get pretty close. Like I'll look at the Libib website specifically, like they let you organize by date. And so I can see sort of what my oldest one is, and I can tell like, oh, this one is going to hit the 1 year mark in like a month or two, so I should prioritize that, things like that. And that's been fine. But like sometimes I like to mix it up a little bit. Sometimes I want to read a book that's a little bit newer, and sometimes it's just fun to make a game out of it. And so one of the things that I realize is that I currently have 13 unread books on my physical TBR that I'm counting. I have a couple of Zora Neale Hurston books that I got as like a box set, but I've decided to take that off of this situation because I'm not going to read all of her books in 1 year, I realized. So yeah, I have 13 books on my physical TBR, and I realized I was like, oh, it would be fun to participate in the TBR Spin. So this is basically like a combination of some booktubers who used to do like various games and prompts to read books off of their physical TBR. And so the way that it's set up now, and I'll have a link to the live stream video that was done for the 2024 version. But the way that it works is there are a set of prompts that are created. They put these prompts on like a wheel basically, and they use like a computer, like a digital wheel for this. And then they spin the wheel, and then that prompt forces you to pick one of those books. And so typically like people have very large physical TBRs, and so they pick a stack of 12 books, and then they use that stack for the TBR Spin. I obviously am changing it a little bit, and I'm honestly gonna do things a little bit differently from how everyone else is doing it. And so I'm just gonna use the 13 books that I have left on my physical TBR as my stack. One of the things about the spin is that like if there is a prompt where you don't have any books that meet that prompt, then you're supposed to like swap out one of the books in your stack for a different book on your physical TBR. And then there's also some prompts that are like swap. The way that I'm thinking about it right now is that if I end up acquiring more books over the course of the year, I'll use that as like my larger pile that I can potentially swap from or pull from if I don't have something that meets that prompt. But if I don't have anything that meets that prompt, then I'm just gonna like pick the oldest book on my physical TBR and go with that one for that month. And so that'll be a way for me to like work through this TBR over the course of the year in a kind of fun way. And yeah, just keep things interesting. So these books here are the books that are left on my physical TBR, and I'm gonna go through all of them just because I think it'll be fun to just talk about what's on my physical TBR in total, and so you can see what my stack is. There's one book on here in this little pile that I'm not including in my TBR stack, and that is this one, Divine Days, because it is like 1,000+ pages. And I'll be talking about this book a little bit more in my goals video because I'll talk about what I plan on doing with this book. But yeah, like I'm not going to be able to read this in a month, and I feel like this is going to require its own project. So this is not one of the books that's considered part of the 13. So we'll put this one back. So I'm just gonna go left to right, oldest to newest acquisition. So this is a combination of books that were sent to me by publishers as well as books that I purchased myself. I get like unsolicited books from publishers, and if it's not a book that I'm interested in, then I'll just like toss it or donate it or something. So the ones that I have on my physical TBR stack are the ones that I'm actually interested in that I get from publishers. So first up, I have The Light at the End of the World by Siddhartha Deb. This is from Soho Press. It came out this year in May of 2023. This is an advanced copy, as you can see by the stripe at the top. I honestly don't know a lot about this book, but I have a tendency when publishers reach out to me about books by authors of color, I'll just like read the quick blurb that they send me and then I'll say yes, usually just so that way authors of color are getting more eyeballs on them. But this is by an author who is of Indian descent. They were born in India and they now live in Harlem. And I'm just going to read you the blurb at the top. It says, connecting India's tumultuous 19th and 20th centuries to its distant past and its potentially apocalyptic future, the sweeping tale of rebellion, courage, and brutality reinvents fiction for our times. So that is the oldest book on my TBR. I got this in February, I believe. And again, it published in May of this year. Next up, I have Invisible Sun by Kim Johnson. So Kim Johnson wrote the book This Is My America, which I never read, I will admit. But this is another one that was sent to me by the publisher, Random House. And this is a young adult book following a young teen named Andre, who was in juvie and he's heading back home and he's trying to basically like reclaim his identity. But obviously there's a lot of stuff going on that makes that really difficult to do. All right, next up, I have a set of graphic novels that I've been wanting to pick up. The first one is In Limbo by Deb J.J. Lee. This is another one that I was sent to me by the publisher, this one by First Second. This is actually a graphic memoir and it follows the story of the author immigrating to the United States from Korea and just kind of her struggles and difficulties with immigrating and getting used to this brand new culture and things along those lines. I believe she immigrated over when she was in like junior high school age. But the art in this one is like really beautiful. And I've been, again, wanting to pick it up. The next two are ones that I actually purchased myself. These are ones that I think I picked up during like free comic book day. I headed to the comic book store and these are just two comics that caught my eye. I did a quick search on them and they had pretty good reviews and I was just like, I'm just gonna get them. So the first one is Glister by Andy Watson. This is the art style, really nice. It just seems like cute. It follows this young girl who lives in like this English cottage and this like magical, I think it's a teapot. Yeah, a teapot that's haunted by a demanding ghost, like arrives and it sets her off on this journey to go find her mother, like her mother who's gone missing. So yeah, this just looks cute. Next up is Papaya Salad. This one I picked up literally because it just, the outside looks beautiful. It has this bright orange papaya, like neon orange, like end pages that just completely caught my eye. This one was actually wrapped up in plastic when I saw it, but I was just like, I love this art. Like the color palette in here is just so pretty. The author is Thai Italian, and this is a graphic novel that follows a grandfather who like fought in World War II, and it's about like chronicling his like life through the war and like finding a wife and, you know, growing up and all of these different things. And yeah, it just sounds really interesting and I'm very intrigued by this one. And again, it was just beautiful, so it caught my eye. Next up is Killingly by Catherine Boutner, I believe. This is one that was sent to me by Soho Crime, and it just sounds super intriguing. It takes place in Massachusetts in like the late 1800s, like 1890s, and it follows this like missing persons case where there is this young woman named, I think it's Bertha, who's gone missing. Like as they are searching for it, they're asking her like best friend Agnes about what exactly happened, but she's being like weirdly unhelpful. And so there's just like a lot of secrets about what was going on in their lives and what exactly happened to Bertha. So it just sounds really intriguing, and I think it has like decent reviews on Goodreads. Next up is The Son of the House by Chiluchi Onyamelukwe Onubia. I apologize. This is one I picked up while I was at a bookstore. I went to Denver last summer and went to one of the Tattered Cover locations and just saw this one. One of the things I like to do when I travel is go to bookstores and pick up books. And usually what I try to do is pick up a book that I had never heard of before, and one that it seemed like it was unlikely that I would like find anywhere else, sort of thing. And so this one is print by a small press and it just sounded really interesting. And this is by a Nigerian author. And so in this story, you are following these two women. The first one is named Enugu, who is a housemaid, and the other one is Julie, who is kind of like this modern woman who's recently gotten married and living this kind of like ideal life. And then there's like this kidnapping that forces the two of them together, and they like recount their lives together apparently. So yeah, like the cover caught my eye. It sounds really interesting. It's by a small press, and like it's a debut and all this stuff. So it sounds like it could be something I'd really enjoy. Next up is a book by an author who I've adored, Much Ado About Nada by Uzma Jalaluddin. This is the author of Aisha at Last and, oh my gosh, what's her other one? Hana Khan Carries On. That's the other one. And so this is her latest one. I saw this at a bookstore. Oh gosh, where were we when I found this? I might have been in Minnesota. And I just remember getting so excited because I didn't realize she had a new one out. And so I was just like, this is the book I'm getting, like period. No questions asked. So yeah, this is one I'm very excited to read. Next, I got Richard Ragamese's Ragged Company. I read Indian Horse a number of years ago and I just loved it. It was so beautiful and I kept being like, I need to read more Richard Ragamese. And then I went to Minnesota last year and I went to Louise Erdrich's bookstore that she owns in Minnesota. And so she obviously has an entire section for Indigenous authors. And I was like, let me just pick up one more of his books because I need to read more from him. So yeah, this is one I'm excited about. Next up, we have the much beloved My Brilliant Friend. I've never read any Elena Ferrante, and I feel like that is a major error on my part. I remember getting a copy of this book from the library and I just didn't read it fast enough for when I needed to return it. I think that it was like soon after it was originally published, and so it was like in super high demand. And I really enjoyed what I was reading, but like I didn't want to rush through it just to like get it back to the library on time. And so I was like, I'm going to put this one down and I'm going to come back to it in the future. And so I found this copy when I was in Milwaukee. I found this at a used bookstore and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to add this to my TBR so that way I can really prioritize starting my Ferrante journey. and I have a very strong feeling I'm going to like this book. I'm going to want to dive into the rest in the series very soon after. But yeah, I need to actually get started with this. All right, next up, I have Good Girls Don't Die by Christina Henry. I've read a number of Christina Henry books at this point. I read, I think, a couple of her retellings, and then she's recently leaned more into like just general horror books. And so I believe that this one falls more in that horror thriller category, but I've really enjoyed her books. And so I want to see how I feel about her stuff when it's not a retelling. And also this is one that was sent to me by the author, by the publisher Berkeley. So yeah, excited for this one. All right, next up is The Murder of Mr. Ma by John Shen Yan Ni and S.J. Rosen. This is a book that is a collaboration between these two authors. It was also sent to me by Soho, and it's a mystery book that takes place in like 1920s London. I haven't read a lot of books that are like collaborations between two authors. Like there's some that are out there, and so I'm intrigued to see sort of how this one goes. But you know, I love a good like historical mystery book, so seems up my alley. And then the final book on this stack is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I've read one of her books. I think I've only read one of her books so far. And this one just came out recently. When did it come out? December? October. I was sent this by Tor. I honestly don't know anything about it, but I do know that like the buzz that I'm hearing is it's getting like mixed reviews overall. And so I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. I genuinely don't know anything about it. And I like going into books as blind as possible. So you can look it up if you're interested. But yeah, this is the last book that I have gotten so far this year, at least unread books, I should say. So yeah, that is my stack of books. So the way that I'm thinking of doing the TBR spin is that I might do like shorts and reels on Instagram, basically like of me picking my book every month, because it's not going to be worth it, in my opinion, to make a whole video about it, because the way that it works is like they usually do the spin and then you see the prompt and things like that. And there was already a live show that picked the prompt for January. And so I already know what the prompt is and I already know what the book is. And so the prompt was to read a book by a Canadian. And that was, 100% definitely the only prompt that was pulled during that live show. And I was like freaking out because I was like, crap, do I have Canadian authors? And now I'm realizing I actually have two, because Richard Wagamese is also Canadian. Yeah, dang. When that prompt happened, I was like, crap, do I have any Canadians on my list? And I don't even know like how I would like swap something out so early. But I said during the live show I was going to read like Much Ado. But now I also realized that Richard Wagamese. But I already committed in the live show comments, because that's binding, that I was going to read Much Ado. And honestly, I've been kind of thinking about picking this one up like recently. I was like, I feel like this is going to be a book that I'm going to enjoy, and why wait? So the book that I'll be reading in the month of January is Much Ado About Nada by Uzma Jalaluddin, because this author lives in Ontario. So yeah, that's the first book in the spin. Like I said, I'll probably do like shorts and reels about the future ones, and so you can look forward to that. But obviously I'll be talking about the books at some point if I finish them, that is. That's my thing too, is like I don't always finish the books on my physical TBR because I'm like, oh, I don't like this anymore. And I just stop reading them. So we'll see how this year goes. So yeah, that is everything I have for this video. Let me know down in the comments below if you are participating in the TBR spin, or if you participated in the past in some of the other little challenges like this. And if you are participating, then let me know what your book is for the month of January. There'll be links down in the description to all of the information you need to know about this in case you want to participate over the year. And you're welcome to join in late, even if you didn't make a stack until into January. You could also just do it for 11 months of the year if you want, and things like that. So yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's a fun way to pick books that you're going to be reading. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.